started my own agency from that and basically said they'd have to hire 5 people to replace me. We got 30,000 vehicles in like 7 or 8 days. I would refresh and there would be like 1,000 more people that are signed up. They spent $5 million on their app and they didn't have their notifications working for a year and a half. I think I had a nightmare the whole night last night about AI agents. If you look at the international players here, they're just dinosaurs and they can't move in this market. When I found out the NZTA was raising prices by 3,000%, it was really stressful.
Just go and do it and see what happens.
Ideas are worth like jack shit, absolute jack shit. Like if you can't execute, there's nothing.
Just take that initiative to actually take whatever crazy ideas that they might have and just try to see what comes of it.
Don't be afraid of ambition. Chase it, love it, wrap your arms around it and say it out loud.
New Zealanders don't know any better. They will just get up and give it a shot. That's why we were first to get to the top of Mount Everest.
Go to dream that ultimate dream. Like, what is it that you ultimately want to do? And it's all achievable.
All right. Welcome to TechMates. Steph, thanks for being here. So today we have one of the most relatable, very relatable human pain point, which is car admin. We're joined by Steph Kennard, who's the founder and CEO of Bonnet and New Zealand's fastest growing vehicle compliance platform. So Steph, welcome to the show. Thank you for being here.
Thank you very much for having me, guys.
Cool. Yeah, before we get into the crazy metrics of the driving growth of Bonnet and what you guys are actually doing, I'd love to kind of talk about how you got here. You're very interesting background because you taught yourself web design when you were 15. I'm just curious how much of that drive and that curiosity came from your family. Because I know your Uncle Dave was a pioneer in the automotive software space, right?
Yeah. This is actually one of the first times I've spoken about this more in depth, so I'm quite excited to kind of share it. My upbringing is quite interesting. So I did grow up in a single parent household in Christchurch. Although in saying that, my dad lived in Orange County and he basically from a very young age raced Trans Ams. I'm not sure if you guys know what those are, but they're very, very cool race cars. And he basically redid old classics and shipped them around the world for 25 years out of Orange County. Even though I was brought up by my mum and it with quite a minimal kind of upbringing, we were didn't have a lot, your normal grit story. I also just loved cars, definitely via him. My whole family did, really, to be honest. And so from a young age, I think from about 8 years old, I just had this burning desire to just be successful. I mean, I think that's just the general tone of it. I started to breed pigeons. I was breeding rabbits. I was trying to get a job at 8, but no one would hire me. I ended up convincing someone at a bakery to hire me and bone chickens, which was the most disgusting job ever. I just always had a job. From at about 15 years old, my uncle, who lived in Auckland, which was more well off than us and also loved cars, came down and said, you should come up to Auckland and live with me, because I was just bunking school to work at that point. I just wasn't going to school at 15, probably 14, to be honest. And so I was like, oh, this looks cool. He's got 13 cars, this is a glamorous lifestyle, I'll do this. And so I went up to Auckland and he had a web design agency. And so he is a legend in his own right. So when he was in his 20s, he used to follow the F1 drivers around Europe and paint murals for their houses. And so he was an amazing artist and he was traveling around with his wife at the time. And when they decided to have kids, they came back here and he was like, well, I can't do that anymore. So what am I going to do? And it was the .com boom, and he basically bought all the OEM domain names in New Zealand for the OEMs Audi, BMW, Mercedes, everyone you can think of. And he basically built them websites, and he went to them and said, look, I've built your website. If this thing takes off, you'll have to pay me. And 15 years later, probably a little bit more than that, when I arrived at 15 years old, he had all the OEM brands in New Zealand. A lot of them before they got shipped out to Germany and stuff like that when it got a bit bigger. So I mean, a really interesting story. He, being an artist first, had a very, very big, he always used to say it all the time, KISS principle, keep it simple, keep it simple. And so all the websites that he built was KISS principle, 3 clicks and you're out. But with that, what happened was he had all these dealerships and Trade Me was already around, and the sales guys would basically need to upload a vehicle to Trade Me and to the OEM or dealership site. So he built this middle component, which was called Car Updater, which was like a pretty common platform when I arrived, but still quite manual. So for 3 hours every morning, I had to press these API buttons every day. So I just remember pressing those API buttons. And after like 14 whiteboard sessions, I kind of started to understand how data worked and the flow and the push. And so it was ingrained in me, like, I think the 5 years that I worked for him, it was like KISS principle, data and cars.
That's
And so
cool.
actually where it started. So then I worked for Fiat Chrysler, and of course, like, I learned more about the industry there and stuff like that. But it was really my uncle that kind of really taught me like how to be an entrepreneur. He made it look easy, you know, the good ones do. And then data, cars, KISS. Yeah. And then I
Wow.
launched Bonnet 10 years later.
And Steph, I mean, maybe just one more question. Like, what gave you that drive? You said you were eager to just dive in and start working and boning chickens when you were, yeah.
My mum just had no money, basically. Like, we just had nothing. Like, I used to go to school and have like the 2-minute noodles, like, but not even cook them, just eat them out of the packet. I mean, I don't want to make it sound like super, super dire, because there was a lot of families that were a lot worse than us. And we had a roof over our head, and my mum like owned her house, but like it was really tough. And I could just see her working so much and like not coming back to 5, and like, what for? Like, I know what for, but what for? You know, like, what we want more. I want more. I want more freedom. And I wanted, like, at the time it was like a 300 seat. And I was like, that's cool. I want that. How am I going to get that? I'm certainly not going to get it by like, and at the time it felt like school was just not for me. I found it really hard to listen to people telling me what to do. Ironically, yeah.
That makes sense.
Mm.
Yeah. And it was kind of inevitable, it sounds like, that you end up doing something with cars or in the automotive world. And you mentioned you went into the corporate automotive world for a while, and I think you were head of digital for FCA for some time.
Yeah.
Yeah, what was that like? And like how, I guess from our perspective, it's probably quite archaic the way they operate these brands. Yeah, maybe take us a little bit into that time and what you learned there.
I loved working for Fiat Chrysler. So Fiat Chrysler had their dealer website. So Fiat Chrysler was like the head like distribution in New Zealand, and they basically had all the dealerships like Andrew Sims and things like that. So my uncle did the dealer websites, and so there was like a dealer conference that I went to, and basically they just were like, "Can you come work for us?" From there, so they kind of poached me from my uncle, but at the same time I was kind of like a bit bored there at that time. I like kind of got to the top. So I started working for Fiat Chrysler. And because I was self-taught, I just could do everything, or at least thought I could do everything. Like I did all the digital, like campaign planning and all the websites and stuff. But for example, like we had the highest spend on TV at the time. Like we were spending the most in terms of like ads, and we would get the ads made from the network, and I can't remember honestly who it was, or the ad company, and that person was sick. And they're like, "Steve, can you do this?" And I got all the running footage out of Detroit, and I probably failed 15 times sending the wrong like video format to the network. And then on the 16th time I got it right, and then they never asked them to do it again. It was just me doing all the TV commercials. Loved the, like, I think it wasn't a typical corporate. It was definitely more corporate. Like our CEO at the time was really keen to just throw as much at me as I would be willing to take, and I was just taking it all. So as much as it was corporate, it was a really fun place to work, and especially because like the brands are just awesome. Like Jeep, Chrysler, Dodge, Fiat, Alfa Romeo coming out of America, they don't have as much like hold over the creative as Germany brands. So at the time, one of the Mercedes asked me to work from them out of Fiat Chrysler. I went there and I quickly realized the creative limitations were, you didn't really have any. And so Fiat Chrysler was quite cool because of that. And it taught me a lot. And then I started my own agency from that, and basically said they'd have to hire 5 people to replace me. And the CEO was like, "Oh, you're a dick, but okay."
Yeah.
And so I had all the brands for like an agency, and I just had an agency for 6 or 7 years and did then.
Yeah, and I mean, comparing the corporate world with, your entrepreneurial experience with your uncle and what you do now and the agency, you said it was still quite an entrepreneurial environment. Do you think, like, moving forward, even car brands are being disrupted by Chinese car brands, by Tesla? Do you think they can catch up, or do you think they fundamentally have to change the way they operate?
I think that BYD and Tesla are doing an amazing job. Ironically, for Chrysler as now distribution for BYD in New Zealand. So it's been interesting seeing, and then BYD has been one of the first brands to say to their fleets, we can actually connect to OEM. So I feel like Fiat Chrysler is actually rebranded to Tico now. It's really good people inside of it, really encouraging tech. I think yes, but I think they're going to catch up fast. I think that they're realizing quickly that, if they don't catch up, they're going to be nowhere. And so, like with today's AI products and stuff like that, I think that they're not falling asleep at the wheel per se, but they are currently lagging. Yeah.
Steph, have you been in a self-driving car?
I haven't. No, I haven't. Yeah. I would love to. Like I get so excited about the OEM Connect. So we're probably about 10 days from like launching out of beta testing and charging for our OEM Connect. So we've got, if you give me your number plate, well, technically the number, but I can find the VIN from your number plate for BYD, Mercedes, or Tesla, we can basically connect into the engine within, well, some of them are instant. BYD is pretty good. Mercedes is pretty good. Tesla loves to just throw a little bit more permissions on there. And then I've got more sensor data than the hardware we're currently selling with no barrier to entry. And it's just beautiful. The technology in New Zealand, we are the first, I think, commercialize it.
Maybe before we dive into that, I was actually curious about your time at Fiat Chrysler, because that's when the light bulb went off for Bonnet, right? You're working with the national service centers and you noticed a pattern.
Well,
take us into the specific moment and what you were seeing every day
so,
that made you realize I have to build an app.
Yeah, where I actually started was completely separate from where it ended, which is a familiar story. But Jeep Wranglers, they have 1 million parts, and you can't just buy a Jeep Wrangler and then go and just get a part fitted. You've got to look at like a brochure catalog. This was 10 years ago. This is probably more than 10 years ago. This was 10 years ago before COVID. And so the original idea was like, can we connect? I know the make, model, and year of your Wrangler by your number plate. Why can't we just connect to see what vehicle accessories we can buy for that? Like, why do we have to look at a brochure? Would I have to walk into a brochure? They probably don't have one. And if they do, it's out of date. That was the original thought process for Bonnet. So Bonnet was always meant to be like a parts accessory connection kind of thing. And then that was the idea. I kind of built that. I had built that with a dealership down in Tauranga. And then quickly realized, and then COVID happened. I was starting to realize before COVID happened that there's just no parts inventory at these dealerships. And even in the second tier of parts accessories, they still don't hold a lot of this. And it wasn't really so people wouldn't really pay for it. It wasn't enough of a tan. And then COVID obviously happened and no one even had parts after that for 4 years. So when I was going through that process, I realized that the data was pretty accessible and there was quite a lot of it for vehicles. And when could that be? And all of a sudden we had the licensing coming through, and that was a valuable thing because people were using spreadsheets or just simply didn't remember. Like, I think I miss my wife and rego every single year. Well, not anymore, but I was always missing it. And then I had a diesel car, and then that was just even harder. So so that's where kind of like the light bulb came from, was just the connection of the data and just knowing that that's actually vehicle owned information, not protected by any privacy kind of laws or anything like that.
Would you notice drivers kind of messing up? Was it because I think it was around expired WOFs and around expired services that they were just not able to.
It was the servicing. People would just miss their servicing at service centers, and so I worked with a lot of the service centers through dealers to kind of how do we get these people in, remind them that a service is due. They were sending letters, or phoning them, and it was just very manual process, but heavy. And so it came from the servicing side and the part side before the licensing side came in. And then I built that with the dealers and service centers, thinking that it was going to be a consumer app supported by service centers and dealers for connectivity and service reminders and stuff like that. I didn't even think it was going to be something for fleets until we launched the consumer app and got the traction from fleets.
Cool. And you mentioned that you had your own design agency. And while you were having this light bulb moment, you mentioned you started building that MVP straight away. Was that kind of an unfair advantage that you were able to kind of just go and solve a problem because you had that agency?
Well, I didn't start building it straight away. I sat on it for probably 2 or 3 years, actually. And I do wonder now, with the boom that we had before COVID, I feel like it would have been hectic and amazing if we'd probably launched it just a bit sooner. But I think I just had a light bulb moment one day and I just told my designer to just design up the whole app. And so we designed up the whole app and then kind of just sat on it for a while. And then one day I was just like, well, I am so excited by this. Like, why haven't I? The reason why I hadn't started building it is because I had WordPress developers. I didn't have a mobile app like engineers or developers, and I hadn't built like a web application yet either. So it was new territory. I understood the logic and like the architecture of what it should do, but I just didn't really know where to start. So I just started building it through a new team that I found over in India. Yeah, and they were horrible to deal with and built the whole thing entirely wrong and had to start again. And then take two, we got there. Yeah, we got there and we launched. I got pregnant. I was talking to Mark about this and yourself on that panel. I got pregnant. It was the most, biggest kick up my ass that I'd ever had. I was like slowly working on it, probably like 5 to 7%, if that, of my time out of the agency was dedicated to Bonnet. And then it was just like, I just knew that it was going to be massive. I didn't dedicate enough time to it. And so I just dedicated, I think I switched it. It was like 7% Charlie and Co. and hired someone there and then just went full time on it. And then launched it. Yeah. Launched the consumer app.
Yeah. And what was that moment when you realized I need to spend all of my time on Bonnet versus I can do this 5 to 7%? Was there like one specific moment, or was that conviction that you built over time?
Was more just, I always wanted to. It was just making sure I wasn't letting the agency down. So I just hired some staff and I trained them for a good like 6 months so I could kind of step back. So it was more just being able to like, we had some really, really big wins with the agency, that there was some good dollars coming through. We started to build web applications and it just allowed me to free up my time. And I just basically got to that point and then, just went all in. And it's just, well, you're doing agency for so long and you're building cool things for other people. It's just so much different and like so much more exciting when you're building something that is yours. Yeah.
Steph, what made you feel like it's time to go all in? And was that scary?
It's scary because I feel like, I'm not sure if I feel scared very often. I feel like I really like the challenge. I just kind of, I don't know how it's hard to kind of describe, but I just always kind of feel like I knew, like I kind of always shut my eyes and just like knew that it was going to be big. And I was just saying to him, it was more just about having the resources to be able to step back from Charlie and Co and make sure those clients weren't getting abandoned. And it was, it just was inevitable for me. Yeah, I feel like there's a lot of points like that I'm like, just the validation. There's been a lot of validation points where I'm like trying to go even harder. And now it's so exciting because we've got AI, I can go even harder.
So you never felt scared. You just felt excitement, a new challenge.
Yeah, I don't think that I've ever felt scared. I just feel excitement. And I just get so excited by like the vehicle data world and what we can kind of do in it. And how we can just make it easy for people. Like, I don't know if you guys have ever seen like fleet management software, but it's like DOS put through a shredder. Like, it's very archaic. Like, the whole fleet management industry is broken, I feel.
And is that just because there's no competition?
So the telematics companies, which are the hardware ones, they make their own hardware. They were born out of the 2000s and they're not SaaS. I mean, they're in the cloud, but you can't sign up for them and kind of have a play with them. They just, I don't feel like they've ever had anyone design the amount like with the KISS principle in mind. It's been developers constantly iterating, which there is nothing wrong with it. But when you're dealing with the everyday person, which potentially could be like a plumber with 15 cars, they don't really want to log into a platform that exhaust them before they even click on something. And I feel like that's what's happening in the industry. I feel like we want to be the Canva of fleet management, which is kind of why we're making it accessible for everyone to sign up. We're making it 5 vehicles for free because we're just really trying to drive that product growth in the top of funnel. But and then on top of that, like all of the systems for fleet management are quite siloed at the moment. Like the health and safety checklist either done manually or through another system. There's no government integration. Like hardware, you can only sometimes use a fleet management company if you've got the hardware. So for the boss's car or for other people that don't have GPS, they can't kind of put that vehicle in the system. It's just very fragmented, and it's not just in New Zealand. It's fragmented like everywhere. There's only really 3 SaaS companies that support.
I guess take us back to when you actually launched Bonnet for the first time on the App Store. I read somewhere that you went to number 1 in week 3 on the App Store, passing TikTok and other very, very popular apps, and basically on 0 almost zero marketing budget. So
Yeah.
how did you do that?
Literally zero marketing budget. So we launched it. I had a guy, Matt, working for me at the time. We launched it, and one of my good friends is an influencer, and she, without asking, basically just pushed it on her social media, which got about 700 downloads, and that was amazing. And then through that, One News actually picked it up. And because there wasn't anything like it at the time, because the TAM, I guess, for their news story, like everyone's got a car, they published a story and it sat on the homepage of One News for what felt like forever. And we've done a lot of PR now after we've understood the strength and the power of PR. This was organic, but nothing gave us the amount of traction that this had. We got 30,000 vehicles in 7 or 8 days. It was just, I would refresh and there would be 1,000 more people that are signed up. It was hectic. And I just remember the feeling being like a mixture of just holy, this is crazy. And holy, I'm not sure if our systems can handle this. And there's so much emotion. And also just being everywhere. I don't read One News, but everyone was reading the news. And then it got picked up organically through a few other ones like 7 Sharp and then natural, the radio stations and everything. It was, yeah, hectic. It was crazy. I just remember having a shower thinking to myself, it was just an overwhelming feeling of this is insane. And also just, I really hope that everyone gets to feel this at one point in their life, because it was just, you go to sleep dreaming of what you want the product to be and the launch or something, but you kind of forget actually what or even think about what it feels like to get product validation. And it was that extreme high of product validation and the fact it wasn't breaking. And it was working.
Tell us more.
And yeah, it was awesome. And then even cooler than that was just the amount of industry leaders that reached out to me and came to my house and sat down with me. I'm not sure if they're not going to listen to this, but the CEO of VTNZ, AA, all the top industry people had seen it. Actually, one piece that I'm missing from this is that I first posted in the New Zealand tech ecosystem page, which went viral, 700 or so likes. And for the tech ecosystem, that's actually where I feel a lot of the industry leaders saw it or shared it. And so we had, we got meetings with Trade Me, we just got meetings with everyone straight away. And I think that they thought that we were 2 years or 3 years. I don't know what they thought really, but I don't think that they thought that we had launched it 7 days ago. Yeah.
Tell us more about what were those feelings that you felt? Was it excitement? Was it because I know exactly what you're talking about, that high of users using the thing that you built and actually using it and liking it and the numbers going up.
Yeah.
But what is that? How would you describe that?
I just think it was extreme proudness, extreme, really, really high volume, being proud and just so stoked. Just really excited and just more so proud, I think that yeah. And you don't feel that very often when you're a founder. I mean, I get excited about product. I don't often feel proud. I don't think in that sense. Yeah. So that was really cool. And just everyone seeing it was awesome too. I've been building this thing for ages. There was times where I'm I've just built this whole thing wrong. The database was just it wasn't even, you couldn't even, it was disgusting. And just to keep going, I feel that's probably one of my biggest strengths is I'll just never stop. I haven't stopped. I actually don't know what that really feels like. I think, you just should pivot and you should scattergun approach a bunch of stuff. And theory is that one will land, right? And if it's not landing, just move. Yeah.
Was there anyone who reached out on that day who's sort of noticing you was the most exciting or made you feel the best?
Yeah. There was definitely a few. I mean, I joked about how you can right click on browsers and just change the text of a headline. I changed the text of the headline and I was because we had VTNZ and MTA and stuff. I can't know if I'm on here.
It's a safe space.
Okay. E-Road, at the time, I thought this was a lot of money as well. This is not my goal anymore. E-Road buys Bonnet for $30 million or something like that. And I screenshotted it and I made it look real and I sent it to my group chat. But then the E-Road CEO reached out and was hey, we think what you've been doing is really cool. You should come in for a meeting. And then we had all the E-Road employees like sign up. We could kind of see them coming through. And at the time, like eRoad was the biggest, like, I mean, this is 3 years ago before their slight downfall now. But yeah, that was like the pinnacle of what I thought was really awesome at the time.
That's cool. That's cool. What about your mom?
Yeah, well, I mean, like, she's just absolutely my biggest cheerleader. She's the woman that's like comments a paragraph on like all of our ads.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So you built this app, and the data you start pulling in is really crazy, right? Your recent stats show that almost 50% of cars on New Zealand roads are driving with an expired wolf.
Yeah.
And is it just, do we have just a nation of lazy drivers, or is the system fundamentally broken? What's actually going on in someone's head when they're driving
Yeah, so
illegally
it's
for 6 months?
it's a third of people don't get a rego done on time, and half of people miss their warrant of fitness. I think it's a mixture of a few things, like definitely the person forgetting, the cost of getting a WAF, the fact that you need to get a registration before a WAF before your registration as well. But there's just a huge amount of vehicles that are on the road just unlicensed, and I don't really think it's policed much anymore. To be honest, like unless you're a boy racer and you're doing something completely obvious, you get pulled over, that will naturally obviously check your compliance. They're not doing any checks anymore. Obviously for businesses, that risk is just, you can't have that in a business, having no WAF. Like the fines for a commercial vehicle are a lot different than consumer, especially if you're carrying goods, like it's thousands of dollars. This pain point for business is massive. Consumer, it's kind of like, well, if I get caught, right? I mean, it might be like $500 to get new tires, or how much is the fine for like a overdue warrant of fitness? Less than $200. So, yeah.
What is it? Do you think does that mean the system is fundamentally broken?
It literally is broken. There's a lot of places it's broken. And I met the Prime Minister actually 2 weeks ago, and I was talking to him about this, and he said we need to get more people running private companies in the government because they just spend so much money. Like the NZTA launched an app. Actually, we were talking to the NZTA pre-launch about doing this with them, which is the government here in New Zealand. They've launched an app since we launched that shows you when your WAF and your rego and your RUC license is due. So you can't put in your odometer reading to calculate how much is left, and you can't purchase anything through there, and there's no servicing or maintenance, anything like that. But they spend $5 million on their app, and they didn't have the notifications working for a year and a half. So, I mean, that's not entirely broken. It's quite wrong, but the systems that they actually send out the data, like we launched Bonnet at the cost of 2 cents per time I check your car's licensing. It was 2 cents. In 3 months, it went up 3,000% to 48 cents. And so that was like a crap moment that we had to completely pivot, / we couldn't make it free anymore. We had to do a crediting system for the data that we were using and introduce a fleet plan that works on our algorithm for a lot more expensive than we were planning to. So, I mean, it doesn't make any sense to me why the government would do that when they're trying to push the ability for the private sector to help them with road user charges. Why do they have a system that is just push and not pull? That we don't know. They never tell us when someone's license is due. We've got to build an algorithm to continuously guess, literally, when someone's license is due. Yet they've taken the price up 3,000%, and they're also saying, we want the private sector to automate this for us, but hold it for a second. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of things that are broken about that. There's a reason why the contact of the NZTA that we've been dealing with, the position has changed. The person in the position has changed 4 times in 4 years. Yeah, sadly.
Do you think there's a route for you to work with the government on this, or do you feel like this is probably just going to be something that you solve, and government will just give up at some point and just default to having you be the kind of the
So
the
there
default
is
solution?
a RFI that they've just done on the legislation where they've asked industry leaders to kind of comment on it so they can help draft the best version or take the feedback from the private sector. And so we've been a part of that, and they've been very openly, quite candid about, we want to use the latest technology, we want to do this and that, we really value your feedback. The people behind the push to do that are great, but what ends up coming out is kind of more of a different story, I think. In New Zealand, the minimum amount of road user charges you can buy is 1,000, and that's on average $76. If they're moving 3.8 million vehicles to that system next year, why is anyone in South Auckland going to buy something they can't see for $76? Like, they need to bring the increments purchase to a more manageable amount. Otherwise, they're probably going to end up with more people non-compliant and less money, ironically, if they didn't just do that. So if they do that or not, I'm not sure. I mean, they haven't said anything about that, but they probably won't. Yeah.
Interesting. So you had a massive influx of everyday consumers just trying to understand where they're at, a way to find maybe. And suddenly you realize that you kind of accidentally built a B2B business, right? Because you had businesses trying to manage their 50 vehicle fleets on your consumer app. Take us to that exact moment. And when did you realize the consumer app was actually
so
a Trojan horse?
I mean, if anyone's ever tried to find product market fit before, when you've got over 100 fleets saying build something and we'll pay for it, generally you listen. So that's kind of what happened. So the owners of the companies were saying, I'm getting my office manager to use your app, but she really needs it on desktop. Can you please build this on desktop? And so in about 3 months, we turned out the web app version of Bonnet, and we launched a lot of people into beta that most of them actually ended up paying us. So that was a huge validation piece. For a second there, I was like, I don't want to be a fleet platform. I want to be a consumer. And then I was like, well, hold on for a second. Let's just look at the data here. And also the NZTA actually called me. And they said, we're launching an app, Steph, you need to pivot. There's been some really cool people in this industry, which I didn't expect. I really thought that like a female in an automotive industry would have just kind of been, I guess, maybe laughed at or just at least ignored. I'm not sure. But I had the NZTA call me and give me a heads up that they were launching and tell me what features they were launching with, which was crazy to me. They came to my house. Well, the guy running the app came to my house for lunch. And so with that knowledge, I pivoted. I didn't drop the consumer app quite a while to figure out where the place of consumers was in the product. Like, it wasn't enough. I don't know if you guys have seen our latest investor update, but we actually like self-churned the revenue from consumers at the end of last year on purpose. So we basically took it from 2 free vehicles for consumers to 5. And the reason is there wasn't just enough value for them when they could do what they were doing on the NZTA app. And if we kind of just needed to compete and also just like drive that product market growth, because a lot of fleets do come from using that. So we did that on purpose. And consumer for us is really just a marketing tool per se. And it really is the edge that we've got going international as well. Going into Australia, which we're very, very heads down, bum up on at the moment, having that side of Bonnet just opens us up to being completely standalone from anyone that's doing fleet telematics or anything like that.
And so maybe just to kind of zoom out a little bit and to explain what your app actually does and kind of what are the tailwinds that are around the electrical vehicle adoption, things like that are driving.
Yeah. So what the app does for anyone with a vehicle, essentially they download it and put their number plate in, and it tells them instantly what kind of vehicle they've got because the NZTA data registry knows. It tells you when your vehicle licensing, like WAF, rego, emojis, the charge of the due, and then you can self-input your servicing. You can connect it to a service agent. So when anything like servicing is due, you can click a button, it takes you there. And you can add up to 5 cars and an unlimited amount of vehicles, machines, and machines track engine hours. So for the average family, it's mum, dad, daughter car, lawnmower, maybe like a motocross bike or something like that. And they put all of that in there and they share ownership between their family, and that's kind of free. What the businesses do is they sign up on the website version of Bonnet. They load their vehicles, say like the average is 17. They invite the drivers, and the drivers use the app too, but in a way that the driver vehicles are linked back to the business. The business can then also set up GPS, so they can get devices installed on their fleet, or if the vehicles are new enough where you can connect into the engine without the need of hardware. And then they've got all the vehicles on the map. We can track where the drivers have been, speeding. They can set up inspection checklists for health and safety, and all of that kind of side of it. So it's a really end-to-end system for fleets from 5 cars up to like 300 to manage their vehicles. And that's essentially where we make our money. And then a lot of the consumers that sign up, about 3 of them are fleets that don't really know what we do. And then the boys here ring the button and get them on a demo and convert them onto the fleet side. Yeah.
But what are the tailwinds that are driving adoption of Bonnet? Because I understood in the beginning that because it's hard to tax electric cars because they're not consuming gas or fuel, right? Then you have to sort of have it be based on miles driven.
Yeah. So we've got a lot of electric vehicles using Bonnet because they just don't know when their license for road user charges is due. And most vehicles need to get 5 new licenses a year. And the BYDs and Teslas they've got to manually remember what their license coverage is. Like, I'm covered up to 20,000 Ks. And then they've got to go onto the NZTA website and they've got to purchase more, and then they've got to remember again, and it's very, very fragmented. So we're the only app in New Zealand that basically allows you to and reminds you of when your road user charges are due. And now we can connect into that engine of a Tesla BYD and set and forget the road user charges. So Steve, who has BYD, downloads Bonnet. He gives us authority to connect to his BYD. We do that. The next day, the diagnostics are released into Bonnet, and then he fills out a form to tell us, does he want to purchase in increments of 1,000, 2,000, 5,000 Ks at a time? And then we basically just do that for him, and the payments are taken out of his account, and he doesn't need to worry about it. So that's the product that we're doing for both consumers and fleets. And road user charges just in diesels and electric vehicles at the moment is a massive pain point, let alone when it's going to be, petrol's joining the system.
And the New Zealand government is trying to put every vehicle into the RUC system by next year. Is that right?
Yeah.
That's like 3.5 million, maybe more, cars under New Zealand. How messy is that rollout going to be? And how are you guys positioning yourself to take advantage of it?
We're realists. So, we believe that we can get 10% of the people's choice market. And what that means to us is, the people that want to automate things as a heavily privacy kind of conscious thing, that people are actually connecting the engine to us. So we're working on kind of like our brand presence and the trust side of things at the moment that basically is going to allow people to do that. People will then have the option to either go manually onto the NZTA website or just use Bonnet without connecting to the engine, but simply having to enter in their $1 once month. Just with that knowledge, we can actually set them to get their road user charges, but they just need to do that manual piece. Other companies that will allow road user charges to be purchased through AA. However, we have heard of like petrol stations, maybe letting you do it at the pump and things like that. But there's a lot of noise around who is and who isn't going to move into the sector. But at the moment, there is a lot of commission to be made if you do move into the sector. But then with the amount of volume coming in, like, it's probably going to be 1/6 of potentially what it currently is. So it's going to be an interesting space. Like, we are doing this for our fleets and our consumers, but it's definitely like a sub 10% of our revenue at the moment. Our revenue is coming from telematics and fleets. Yeah.
What if the government changes the rules around all this stuff? You're essentially subject to that regulation in a way.
Yeah.
Are you worried that at some point that's going to disappear and your entire kind of value proposition to small and medium-sized businesses is not going to be relevant anymore?
Not at all, because we're telematics and fleets. So we are solving a pain point for this sector, but I have consciously in the last 6 months, basically, we have got pretty amazing metrics with fleets telematics side and the whole kind of like fleet tech side. The consumer and fleet set and forget for road user charges would be a big one if it happens, which we believe it will, but I'm not banking on it to be the only kind of like angle Bonnet has anymore. The government is the government. You just don't know what you're going to get. We currently are the only kind of company out there that's doing it, and we're trying to move as fast as possible. So we're not slowing down on that side by any means, but all of the features that we're building for consumer are coming through because we've built them already for fleet, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. I want to talk a little bit about your capital raise and how you went from launching this app and going viral to setting up the company and raising money for it. I guess if you were in Silicon Valley and you'd get to 30,000 users in such a short time and go on to number one on the App Store, you'd probably raise tens of millions of dollars straight away. And then with the B2B Pivot, you'd probably raise tens of millions more. But you went and raised money from local VCs, including us. How do you think about kind of building a company in New Zealand and the capital efficiency that companies like you probably have versus Silicon Valley?
Yeah. Well, wouldn't that be nice? But I think it really makes you do everything really well, and anything that's not working, you exit really fast. For example, like our attribution tracking, we spent 3 months basically doing that wrong and using a system that we shouldn't have used. And so we just cut it out straight away and we moved. I think, and I'm sure this isn't the case for everyone, but I could see this happening to a lot of startups. If you've got that much money, it kind of just makes you a little bit numb to things. And you probably see things maybe 3 times after the point of you probably needing to see them. So I think it makes us really nimble and also very, very smart on just the fact that we move really fast because we see the needle moving so fast. Um, and I think that gives us an advantage after everything. Unfortunately, it dilutes my shares, but hopefully we're at the point now where we're really, really good with exactly what we know we're selling. We know what ads work. And we know when we go into this next raise, the capital is going to be used super efficiently.
Maybe on the notion of capital efficiency, we talked a little bit about this before we started recording, but now with AI, you can probably do even more with less.
Yeah, I would.
Yeah, maybe can you share some stories on how you're thinking about deploying AI?
Yep. So I was just before I came into this meeting, I was actually standing out there with the team. And one of them jokes, "You're going to fire us now that you're getting claw in the office." And I said, "No." I said, "No one's losing their jobs. We're about to go into Australia, and it would be great if I could use the same team to deploy over there." So it's like, we know what we're doing in New Zealand now. Let's try and automate as much as we can, and then just remain low head count as we go into another country. So that's my goal, my immediate goal. I mean, you can't replace knowledge, especially when we're this small. I feel like the speed of delivery is just like, I think I had a nightmare the whole night last night about AI agents, and just like, I have got so much like fire up my ass to do this as fast as possible, obviously the best that we can. But I'm like, I just know probably like 1/10 of what you guys, even if that, of AI and its ability. And if any of our competitors is thinking about it in the same way as me, they're just going to like overtake. Like, I just feel like it's the most important thing to focus on is like, how can we build this into our company to kind of automate as much as we can and make our delivery as smart as possible and our products delivered as fast as possible, as best as they can, and obviously like have a heavy point on the security as well with everything that we're doing. And so I'm just extremely motivated to build this into the company as fast as possible to make sure that we become the market leader in fleet tech in the next 2 years in New Zealand, and then dominate as fast as we can in Australia.
I think you even started speaking faster when you
I
started
know,
talking about that.
I know, excuse me. I'm like, oh,
Heart rate going up.
but it's so exciting.
Yeah, but on that nightmare, I mean, I guess if you look at it from the positive side, and we talked a little bit about this earlier, you can probably experiment and do things and ask for forgiveness when the AI goes rogue and
Yeah,
accidentally messages somebody they shouldn't have.
yeah.
Whereas your competitors, they might not be able to experiment as fast, right?
Yeah, I think, I mean, going back to like the 20-year-old fleet tech companies, fleet software companies, like, forgive my French, but it's run by just like big corporates, white old men. I don't think they're going to allow it to come in as fast at all as what I'm trying to work with. I think the competitors in the space will come up from underneath us, potentially. I mean, I think that we're a little bit de-risked having OEM telematics and hardware in terms of what we do, but the compliance side, I feel like could be something that AI could do. So I'm quite aware of this whole space. But if you're looking at the competitors in the market, who's leading the market in New Zealand at the moment, eRoad and Navman. eRoad CEO just stood down after 11 years. That's a hard beast to move as well. And they've got terrible customer service. Pretty much everyone that was with them in New Zealand hates them, or is stuck in a contract and will leave them. Navman's been up for sale for the last 3 years globally and doesn't pick up the phone. Like, our big titans are definitely sinking and half sunk. It's the other kind of ones that are underneath here that will be able to be as nimble as us. That is probably more on my mind.
Steph, tell us how you're deploying AI and agents. What was the most exciting kind of applications that you found?
We're still at the beginning stages. I mean, we're hiring another a developer here at the moment, and obviously, like, your natural like Claude kind of components are helping speed delivery up. And we used to have to use a graphic designer, and now we don't, because Claude's pretty much got all the assets that she needs, and then it just delivers, something in 5 minutes instead of like 3 days, which is great. In terms of like, because we're compliance first as a business, it is kind of admin heavy. There is just some companies that need a lot of hand holding with that. And so we've got admin staff here. So that's the whole side that I'm trying to automate. So I believe the whole thing can really be automated, and those people can kind of be put on better things. That's where I'm trying to deploy it at the moment. We are in the very early stages of the first claw block. And then I'm hoping that after that works out and we've got our head around how the system works and the capabilities, each department will have their own. So for the sales guys, it would be doing all the proposals, spitting them out, potentially looking at lists and like identifying sales segments that are the highest ROI and underserved and things like that. And just doing the things that really just have forgotten about but can really help like land us the deals. And then of course I'm currently got an internship with Summer of Tech for an AI engineer. So we have, as you could imagine, a huge amount of data about vehicles. And so their job is just to come in and just basically like, what can we be doing with this data that we're not doing with this data? What kind of insights can we be giving to our fleets? Like, how can we save them money and make their vehicles safer? And just what cool shit can you do with this data, basically? And how can we deliver that to them as fast as possible? And then on top of that as well, we're going to be doing that AI agent. So anyone that's enterprise basically can connect via a data source and run their own like language model but via the Bonnet data. So instead of them having to go above us or screen scraping, we're just going to supply then the data. So we're kind of de-risked in that aspect as well.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's really cool. So you now have 60,000 vehicles on the platform, right? In New Zealand. And you're looking at other markets, UK, Australia. Vehicle compliance is inherently localized, and the UK's MOT system is totally different from New Zealand's WOLF system. How do you take software product that's custom built for New Zealand and scale it globally?
So, I mean, this is the thing that's been on my mind for the last year, really. So our source here is that compliance is hard. And people that don't know what GPS use spreadsheets because there's just so many compliance requirements for a vehicle in New Zealand, like 3 usually, but if it's a crane or anything else, there's more certifications. Now the product has morphed into health and safety, telematics and GPS. Going into New South Wales and Victoria, they don't have any SaaS systems to kind of like help with compliance or telematics or health and safety. So it's kind of going to flip on its head in terms of value prop for them. It's going to be the ability to connect into vehicles with no barrier to entry for the OEM. In Australia, we're able to connect into a lot more brands than BYD in New Zealand, Tesla and Merc, because they just are a bigger country with more vehicles. So that's the aspect we're going with, health and safety and then compliance. So we've got 3 big pillars. It's just going to be reversed. Yeah, state by state compliance changes and country by country it changes. So that's definitely our biggest kind of like hurdle to just make sure the terminology is the same state by state. But in terms of the actual data, the government data to run on it to make it as like automated as possible, all that data is there and it's cheaper than New Zealand. So that's great. Yeah.
Interesting. And where do you see yourself in 3, 5, 7 years? Like, where do you see Bonnet?
Well, CarTrack in New Zealand is who I would say would be our biggest competitor.
Where do you see Bonnet in 5 to 7 years? Where's Bonnet going to be?
Oh, yeah. So, I mean, our competitor in New Zealand is like the one that's doing the best job is CarTrack. So that's actually out of South Africa. They've got really good customer service. Their product's pretty ugly, but they do a good job. They're doing a lot with AI. They're not SaaS or anything like that, but it's the only kind of it's the only fleet software we've lost to in the last like quarter, and we just think that they're doing a great job. That have been losing work to us though, and they're worth $2.2 billion globally. So I feel like if we can nail it against them here, and it's a bit of a fight at the moment, I feel like between us, we can nail it offshore. My sell price about a year ago was a lot lower than it is now. And I just feel like with looking at all the competitors globally, they've all got Bs. And I think our pivot to just focus on the B2B telematics and bureau fleet management is really the ticket here. If you would ask me last year, I would have said launch in Australia and California and then probably exit. It really just does depend on that AI aspect, like speeding us up, I feel like is what I'm hoping that it's going to do. And CarTrack's in 22 countries. I'd hope that after Australia and our knowledge about going into there, we'll be able to just launch globally after that and be in all the countries. And instead of going slowly territory through territory, AI will hopefully be able to make us global from after Australia, essentially. And then 5 to 7 years, hopefully, exit. Yeah.
When you say exit, what does that mean?
We've had a few offers already, actually, and definitely the ones with the deepest pockets are leasing companies, like vehicle leasing companies, and there's a few kind of on our radar that we've kept comms with, and they're pretty big in North America. And they basically, so leasing companies essentially are like financing the vehicles, but they also pay a pretty big premium to actually manage those vehicles for you. And at the moment, if you're with one of these leasing companies, it's a blind relationship. You actually have no visual dashboard of what they're doing. And Bonnet would work it perfectly to be that visual dashboard. And this is kind of where we were going with the company that we're speaking about. We were going to do a partnership with them, but then all the ruck news came out with petrols. And everything just got really crazy. And so we're just kind of still keeping comms there, but that's definitely where we've seen the most promising dollar floor signs from.
You know, we often talk about New Zealand founders kind of like selling out early
Yeah.
and not having a big enough vision for
Yeah.
themselves or the company. So, you know, and I don't know, I think it makes sense, right? Because maybe, you know, on a personal level, like, I mean, like making 10 million versus 100 million kind of like doesn't really matter, right? So if 10 million comes along, you know, that's pretty significant. You take it. But
Yeah.
do you feel like you could build a really big global company here that could be like an iconic company that eventually maybe goes public?
Yeah, I think when we were doing our raise last year, it was a lot of interesting conversation. It's like, what's the $1 billion idea? Especially with iTown. So it was like, what's the $1 billion idea, Steph? You know, and I'm like, oh yeah, licensing and road user charges and petrol and taxes and stuff like that. Like, right? But really, like, what we've actually got with the fleets is really, really special. Like, our numbers are really great. And if you look at the international players here, they're just dinosaurs and they can't move in this market. Fleetio is an interesting one because Fleetio, I think they just did a raise for 100 million a couple years ago. Fleetio is a bit different because it's maintenance based. Whip Around, I don't know if you guys just saw the exit 2 days ago. Do you guys see Whip Around's exit? They're fleet compliance, New Zealand founded, but based in what's the state? One of the states in America. They just sold for under 200 million. Like, that's probably a lower end, but if you just look at them and their valuations at the moment and how many vehicles that they manage, it's a really, really big place to be in. And so that's the future that I see for Bonnet. It's just making it super easy, keeping the consumer side so we get a lot of the top of funnel. And I do believe that it can absolutely be like a $1 billion valued company if we keep it easy for people to use and do the OEM connect. Having hardware, we've got hardware in a lot of our fleets because we did need to understand it, the sensor points, and kind of do that for the older vehicles as well. But it's definitely not the future of what I see Bonnet being. We're definitely going to try and push the hardware-free OEM Connect as much as we can and as fast as we can for all the brands. But naturally, you're going to have fleets that have got aged stock that they just need the hardware for. But hardware on our balance sheet, I'm learning the hard way, is just like not where we want to be. And, you know, having to rely on stock orders and things like that. It's part of the business at the moment, but it's not the future.
And is that a vision you're excited about? Or do you feel like, you know, in a few years, if somebody offers you 50, 60, 70 million?
I mean, it depends on circumstances always, like, you know, but that's definitely not what I'm aiming for. Like, all of the decisions we're making in the company is like, is this something that a $1 billion company would do? Is this a product that's going to get us to 22 countries? Or are we focusing too much on the New Zealand market when we could really be trying to like launch into Australia because we're trying to get a sale for like 10 grand, right? So like, there's a lot of that kind of going into my mind now. I don't want to just be in New Zealand at all. Like, we've got a pretty good presence in New Zealand now, but you know, they've only got 4 million cars here. But there's ones like California's got 40 million cars just in one state. So I think it's just about making sure that all of the decisions that we're making now and all the stuff on our roadmap is modeled for what that B is, that $1 billion company, rather than like the $10 million company in New Zealand. Yeah.
Makes sense. And kind of looking to the future, right? I mean, cars are basically computers on wheels. And in 10 years, will this whole like vehicle admin thing that we do as humans, will that even be a thing? Or will cars just automatically pay their own taxes, book their own
Well,
services?
yeah. I
Will
mean,
we
I
even
would
own
hope that
cars?
it's like you sign up to Bonnet when you buy the car, or potentially Bonnet's the system that you kind of like do a vehicle transfer of ownership via. And then Bonnet's the layer that you just like know is running in the background, but you don't really need to do anything with. It's just the silent player for like automated compliance. You can log, if you're a fleet, you can kind of log in to see where your vehicles have been and potentially do any like billing. That should be automated too. Yeah, there'll be a visual component to the fleets, but for consumers, it will be like more of a process used to purchase and then kind of keep compliant, and then everything's automated underneath that.
But you've kind of heard this. I mean, and I'm sure you're very well aware of this, that most cars sit unused, right? 70 or 80% of the time. Kind of, Elon's idea with these robo taxis is that actually like you can buy a car and then it goes and kind of like drives like an automated Uber driver for you, makes you money. And in that kind of scenario, will most people even own cars?
I like my car and I don't really want anyone else driving it. So, I mean, for some people, I wouldn't think that would get more than 15% of the market in that model, though. Maybe in 10 years, we don't really care as much about cars for some reason in that world, potentially, maybe. But there's just something about having a nice car that I think is quite nice. I don't think people are going to get less vain in a way, potentially. But I see what you're saying. Yeah, I think there will be a certain amount of that, but I think there will be always people buying their own cars. But then I guess in a 10-year world, that's what do the cities look like? If the roads are too busy, maybe they need to do that. And congestion charging's got to the point of like, you're not allowed to drive on the road. So maybe, I don't know, it just depends, I guess, on how big the population is.
Yeah, and I guess even if you have fleets of robo taxis driving around and somebody earns money owning them, they still need to be administered, right? And taxes still need to be paid, road charges and all of that. So there's probably a future for that.
Yeah.
Great. I think we would love to wrap up on just a quick fire round, if that's okay. Great. You have a background in design and automotive. Which of those two skills was more critical in launching Bonnet?
Definitely design, because it's all about that wow factor that got viral. Yeah.
What's a classic startup advice that you absolutely hate?
Co-founder, maybe. But you have to have a co-founder, maybe. I mean, like, I get it, but I mean, I don't agree.
Interesting.
Wow. Yeah. So you're a sole founder. That's pretty cool.
Well, so this is again something I'm not sure if you guys can decide. The reality of my founding journey was a lovely man that now invested into us said you need a co-founder because you're not technical enough. I agree, but I also feel like I don't need that. I agree with it in some sense, but in some others, I don't agree. I think it's about just being tenacious. Yeah.
And I think, I mean, in today's world, I don't know if you've tried building stuff yourself with Claude Code, but I think if you have, like, I don't think anyone ever really needs anyone technical anymore. Like, you should kind of know how stuff works, and then
well, it's easy enough to build stuff on Claude Code, but then it's like once you've got a certain amount of stuff built, how to not break everything else with your new code. Yeah.
What's the most stressful day you've had in the company so far?
Oh, that's a good question. When I found out the NZTA was raising prices by 3,000%, that was quite stressful. That was really stressful. I thought we had no company. That would definitely be the most stressful day. Everything else I just find kind of fun in a way. Like when we've got fires to put out, it's just like all hands on deck. It's stressful at the time, but then, once you see everyone rally and put out a fire, it's quite cool.
Enjoy that. Great. And what's your favorite car brand?
Jeep, 100%. I love Jeep.
Love to hear that. I just got a Jeep as well.
Did you? What kind of Jeep?
A small one, the Renegade, I think. Is it? Yeah. Thank you so much. This was good.
Yes, Steph, it's been an incredible master class watching you, find a real world problem and then just executing ruthlessly to solve it. And pivoting whenever things change, right? So for all the fleet managers out there and the forgetful drivers, gotta get Bonnet and use it.
Cool. Awesome, guys. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for joining us. All the best.
Thank you for tuning in to TechMates. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with friends. We'll be back soon with more stories of Kiwi and Aussie founders reshaping the future and disrupting down under. Until next time, keep dreaming big and daring to disrupt.